I'm Dr. Lisa Simpson, President and CEO of AcademyHealth. Welcome to our Future of HSR interview series. As AcademyHealth celebrates 40 years advancing health services research and health policy, I wanted to build on that history to look forward at how our field is changing and how we might align our work towards higher impact, more equitable research in the future. In this series, I'll be talking with leaders in health services research, in health policy, and innovation to reflect on where we've been and, more importantly, where we're going next. Today, I'm talking to Dr. Ivor Horn, Director of Health Equity and Product Inclusion at Google. Thank you for joining me today, Dr. Horn, and I'm really excited about our discussion. So let me start with a question that kind of looks back and looks forward. So you started as a pediatric researcher when we met many years ago, and you're now this director at Google, and you're also an angel investor and a startup advisor. So you've really had quite a remarkable range of experiences. And can you talk a little bit more about how health services research has sort of expressed itself in your work and how that has evolved over the years?
Thank you so much. It is an honor to be here, and I am really excited about where we are in health services research and where Academy Health is. I think for me, making that transition from academia and academic researcher to technology and the startup space, the foundation of my thinking as a health services researcher really drives how I do my work. It's evidence-based, data-driven, and it helps to ask those questions and it helps to move the needle forward. And so for me, being a health services researcher really is the foundation of the way that I think about the problem solving that we do today.
You have experience not only as a researcher and these other sectors we've already talked about, but also implementing programs to improve health outcomes. And one of the things that we see and are promoting is for health services research to really partner even more than it has in the past with those who are implementing changes in health and healthcare. And that also includes partnerships with communities and patients and a whole range of stakeholders. And so as you think about your work today and over the years, tell me a little bit more about the role of partnerships in achieving, what we are striving for, better impact, more equitable research, which ultimately leads to better outcomes.
Oh my gosh, it's partnerships, partnerships, partnerships. And I think it really began very early in my research in health disparities when we were doing collaborative consortiums, when we were doing NIH funded consortiums on health disparities in pediatrics. And it really meant, how do we engage with the community in a way that was bi-directional and wasn't transactional and led to an established relationship? There was so much as a part of our work around building trust with the community and sort of sharing where we were and what we were learning with humility, and then relying on the community's expertise around their experience. But it required us to say, this is the limitation of what we can do with research. For them to understand, like, they have all of these amazing ideas, but we couldn't do everything. And I think that part of learning around working with community, doing community-based participatory research, and building with community to impact outcomes and action really led me to think about, how do we do that work in technology? How do I have a team of engineers and product managers really who may not have the lived experience of the populations who are experiencing health inequities? How do I bring that story to them and help them to build alongside the community? So this is something that I feel like we learned a lot. We didn't get it perfect. We have a long way to go when it comes to health services research. And how are we bringing that into a technology environment where things move a lot faster so that we're not sort of exacerbating bias and exacerbating stereotypes that exist, but we're bringing in the learned and lived experience of the communities that we're trying to serve.
Those are some great points. I mean, you've mentioned, the importance of partnership, trust, building that trust, which takes time. And as a research community, approaching the questions and our partners with humility. And I think that's we're still working on that. So in addition to those areas where we've made some progress, but we need to make so much more progress, what are some areas that you think might be of the greatest opportunity for health services research as we go forward?
I'm excited about the way that health services research is evolving. When we started, we only had certain tools in our toolbox. We had survey data that we could collect. Now, with the ability of AI and machine learning and natural language processing and data and access to data from so many different areas, we have more tools in our toolbox. And I think it really important that the fundamentals of how we think about health services research be incorporated into this work. We need to think about what's the data that we're collecting, what is missing from our data, and how are we still transparent about saying the limitations of what we've built into a solution and into a product. Because when we start incorporating these things into our clinical workflow and our workflow of caring for patients and doing health related work outside of the four walls of a healthcare system, it is really important that we create some transparency to say, this model was built and it doesn't match this population. So you really need to be careful and understand there's always when you write an article, you are expected to write a limitation section in your article. How are we thinking about that when we're building products into our workflows and making sure that we're making that transparent as well? So that's where the fundamentals of health services research growing into the innovation and technology of tomorrow and today really plays a key important role to me.
Now let's look squarely forward. If you had to predict, what might be the most important contributions, one or more, of health services research over the next 40 years that we can't just expect to happen, but that we need to make happen?
First of all, having diversity, and that means race, ethnicity, gender identity, geography. That is going to be so important for the success of health services research moving forward. And so proud that you've taken a lead in really moving that forward. So thank you for that. And I would say this ability for us to do health equity globally at scale, it is going to be critically important for health services research to grow there. And I'll give a second one. As we do more innovation and technology, I love working with startups, and the ability to help startups understand the importance of their data, even at the early stages in the beginning, and what it means to help them be able to scale a company, I think is also a critical role that we can play. So for me, there are lots of things. It's on the business side, it's on the data side, and it's on the care side. One more thing that I could say to health services researchers is your future and the possibilities of what we can do with health services research is endless. And I think we were conditioned and trained that there was one path of where we could go if we were health services researchers. And now I just say, knock down the walls, like come out of the box and recognize that where you can go and the impact that you can go anywhere. And that is really what I tell mentees. And when people come and they ask me what they can do with their research career, I remind them that the doors are wide open and you should walk through. And that to me is the biggest impact that we can potentially have in the next 40 years.